Alliance for Women and Girls, AFOG, is a network of independent organizations across Africa, each dedicated to creating a world where every woman and girl can thrive. As the Chief Executive Officer, VONGAI NYAHUNZVI shares more insights.
I grew up in a small village called Norton, just outside of Harare in Zimbabwe. So the community that I grew up, teenage pregnancies were very rife. So for me, from as young as like 12, 50% of the children I grew up in my community were getting pregnant. My own sister got pregnant when she was about 13, and many of the friends that I went to school with, like when you came to Form 2, they were getting pregnant. And for me, then, my typical day was waking up, sometimes going to the fields, and I had to walk almost 3 kilometers from my parents' house to go to school on foot because I had nothing else. So to be honest, as a young kid, I wasn't very interested in school. But what then happened is there were 2 NGOs that were working with young girls in my community. So when they met with me, they said, and through our teachers, they shared that they saw the leadership potential in me that I never thought existed. So from that time, they started investing a lot in my leadership, and that became the beginning of my whole kind of career trajectory. We used to play in the grounds and without shoes, you know, kids in the neighborhood and everything. We had no toy that was bought, so we'd make like some fake dolls with things that would pick from the like garbage. We would make balls, footballs. We would play what we used to call pada, or pada, where you have threads and then you play different games. I think at any given time, we had about 20 children coming together to play. But one particular memory that wasn't very good, but that I recall from me growing up, was when one of the kids that we played with, she stole money from the neighbor. And then this other man who we used to call uncle beat all of us up because they were saying, if one of you does something wrong. So where I grew up, also a community was fully responsible for ensuring that every child, you know, it wasn't like only your parents can ridicule you, everybody could ridicule you. But then, although we grew up with humble background, I think what I recall and remember was also the love that surrounded us, that it wasn't everything that was gloom. But having said so, there wasn't many role models. It was also not on the place I grew up in, was an industrial town. So most people who came up, we came there, were working in the industries or were farmers. So education wasn't really at the top list of anybody. And there was only 2 schools in the whole town, but they were not even overly subscribed.
The network aims at creating a society where equity and equality of gender is the order of the day.
So why women? Because if you look over the years, men have had supports, so much support over the years. One of the things that I always get pushed from people who support men, they're saying, by us pushing for women, we're now leaving men behind. Of course, there's a school of thought that sometimes when you look at men, the ones who are perpetuating gender-based violence, the one who are, you know, are the men, where is the place for educating men? So I'm thinking, I'm sure someone else would have the passion for men. And for us, we, as a network, we collaborate with organizations that are supporting men, but our focus as the Alliance for Women and Girls is purely around the girl child and the woman. So if you think now, even around climate or natural disasters that happen, girls and women are affected the most. You know, recently I was talking to one of our network members who are saying, you know, as a result of, for example, things like COVID, you know, teenage pregnancy started rising, domestic abuse was going up because men were no longer going to work and they were beating some of their women. Now again, even conversations around climate change, people who have to walk miles, sometimes get abused, are women. So for us, we are so obsessed with, we want to support women. Of course, I'm sure there are people who are saying enough is enough, but as far as we're concerned, statistically right now, if you look Africa, the population is set to double by 2050, and half of that population will be women, young girls, under 30. So for us, the time is now to act, because if we do not act now, we are going to perpetuate the same cycle that has gotten us to where we are. I also believe there's a lot of lip service that's being paid around, we've got women in this, women in that, but still, when we think about all the other responsibilities that are put on the shoulder of women, we're still a long way to go.
I joined the organization in end of March, beginning of April this year. 2024. How I found out about it, it's my aunt who sent me the volunteer form. So I started as a volunteer. She sent me the volunteer form in around Feb this year actually. And I filled it in but sent it in a month later, that's March. For me, so far being part of the team, it's a fun journey. One, I like the team. It's such a fun team. They're very awesome and scattered across Africa. So I'm happy that we were able to connect with our Kenyan team members today. So as much as, yes, the people are fun, the work that we do is very important, I've learned to respect, the organizations that are committed to helping women and girls in different sectors, let's say gender-based violence, climate change, education, health, etc. And it made me also realize the need for people to just be helped across Africa, not only in Kenya, but across Africa, because yes, there are different countries in Africa, but some issues are very similar. And us as an organization, standing in and helping the organization keep running, just sustainability for the long run in the future, just helping them. What do you need? Is it skills in, let's say, how to run an organization, in writing a proposal when you're going to donors, sometimes it's just mentorship or just self-care. How do I balance my work and personal life, because everything is too much.
We've been doing this for a year, but what we've been able to achieve is so large, and that is very largely driven by VONGAI and her clarity of vision that she cascades to the team, and her passion. As someone who's been very directly impacted with inequality as a young girl from Zimbabwe, and what she had to shift about her story to be able to be as successful as she was. It's very clear when you see the kind of work that we do, how whether it's in the network department, the finance department, the operations department, just that commitment and passion to doing work excellently, but also desire to learn, iterate, and improve, which is such a big part of who she is as a person, is very cascaded to us as team members. And that Ubuntu, the African culture and collective work and interdependency in how we conduct our work, that's really injected in how we all do our work, and that's largely because of VONGAI.
Leadership development, building networks, and access to essential resources are the three main areas of focus.
The Alliance for Women and Girls is a network of independent organizations. So what happened with the story that I told you about my bridges? So for me, it started as an obsession with, we can no longer sit still and let bridges that had helped people like me crumble. So when I realized, and if you look out there around, most organizations that are in the gender space, they're obsessed with how are we addressing gender-based violence, how many beneficiaries are we supporting, how many people have gone into STEM, how many pregnancies are we avoiding. Those things are very important. But for us, we believe there was not many organizations that are obsessed and say, hey, but who is supporting those people, those change makers that are spearheading these initiatives? So that's how the Alliance was born. So our whole purpose and the whole idea behind our work is that how do we become behind the individuals, the organizations that are spearheading gender initiatives across the continent, so that we support them with the tools, the resources they need to do this work. So for us, we've got three main buckets of work. So the first one is what we call leadership. We've got different leadership initiatives that we support our network members and organizations. We strongly believe this ethos that leadership exists at all levels. So we've got issues like fellowships, like Hey Africa Ubuntu Leadership Fellowship, which is a 6-month fellowship in partnership with Judge Business School in the UK, which is one of the most prestigious universities in the world. So CEOs and founders go through these 6-month fellowships, and our focus will be on self-mastery, relational mastery, and context mastery. I always say for us, to the teams, if you have got 60 minutes to solve an organizational problem in which your life depends on, spend 55 minutes working on your leadership. Because when you work on that, the rest becomes easy. We also have got what's called Hey Africa Incubator, Leadership Incubator for under 35s who are spearheading gender initiatives. Because if you look again on the continent, most of the incubators focus a lot on how can you make sure you know how to fundraise, how can we make sure you've got proof or clarity on what you do. But for us, no one is getting obsessed around how do you make sure you work on your leadership such that everything else becomes easier. We've got other things that we do, like even short courses, small courses. So leadership is one of our main arms. That's one theme. The second theme is what we call movement building, because for us, we believe for us to go far and to go further, we need to come together as gender activists or change makers in the gender space. So as a movement, right now we've got network partners in 20 countries, 81 network partners in 20 countries across the continent. And then when they come together, fireworks happen. And then, even simple things around someone putting on the group, on the WhatsApp group around, guys, I've got a meeting with a donor who has met with this donor. People pouring into that. We've seen incredible work, incredible results when people are supporting each other. We've also seen sub-committees or communities of practice forming, like people who are in the education space, people who are in the gender-based violence, etc. So we've got a whole movement that support themselves and support each other. We also say as a network, that saying that says farmers do not grow crops, but farmers create an environment in which crops grow on. So for us as a network, we create conducive environment for these change makers to thrive, to go far and to go fast together. The final bucket of work that we have is what we call knowledge sharing and resource mobilization. So we've built a portal with thousands of resources that any of our network members can tap into. They'll find anything that will help them in their leadership and management, but also organizational sustenance, from how do I get clarity about what I'm trying to do? How do I influence the government in terms of the agenda that we're trying to have forward? How do I see the government as a strategic partner in what I'm trying to do? We've got people saying, but how do I fundraise? I'm new, I know no one else. What do I do? To how do I build a board? I'm always asked questions around how was I able to get a daughter of a former president, to get a former president on my board, and to get some of the movers and shakers. So for us, that's the information we share around. You don't have to have social capital. So there's a lot of content. And also our network partners can find each other. Someone could say, I want to find people who are in this space, in this country, or in this geographical location, and then they connect with each other. Or someone might say, I want to engage with an organization that's strong in X, they will come together. So those are the three buckets of work that we do: leadership, development, because we say leadership development for systemic change, and the second around network building or movement building, and then the last bucket around resource mobilization.
Despite the significant challenges encountered, Alliance for Women and Girls AFWG strives towards achieving the set goals.
At a personal level, of course, it's easier for me to sit here and say we've been successful here and successful there. There are times when, even though my whole calling in life is to help others overcome imposter, there are times when I feel that myself, where you think, but VONGAI, can you do this? Is the vision too big for you? But I always say to people, if the vision doesn't scare you, it's not worth pursuing. So I think sometimes at a personal level, I've seen that I have to do a lot of self-work in myself to remind myself of my worth, to remind myself, sometimes when you're under pressure, that little girl VONGAI who grew up, who nobody wanted to play with, comes back to just haunt you. But then also another challenge sometimes is, as a woman trying to navigate spaces on the continent, it's been a challenge. But sometimes when people hear about what we have done and the access, you end up navigating and leveraging kind of the social capital, but there's always challenges around how do I navigate. Another challenge is around resources. To do this work takes time, takes capacity, and takes money. So one of the things that we always struggle with is about how do we balance fundraising for the work that we are doing, but also supporting our network partners. So then the last one is about fatigue and how do you do work-life balance? Because this work is a lot, it takes a lot from you. I said earlier on, I personally don't believe in work-life balance, but I say work-life congruence. Like, how do I make all my worlds kind of come together in a way that will allow me to have rest and peace?
The network's mission is to enhance the impact of those committed to gender equity.
I joined AFWG nearly a year ago. And why did I join this team? I think for me, like, women's work and women empowerment and creating spaces and cities and environments where women thrive has always been a passion for me. And as someone who has benefited from a network, I'm a member of Zawadi Africa, and that's the network that enabled me to go to university in America through scholarships, and I got leadership support. It's been clear for me from a very early age in my life what interventions through our community to support women can lead to, and specifically what a network where I have peer support so many years later can like help you thrive and grow your career and support you as you grow. So I think a mix of both an organization that's focused on empowering leaders doing gender equity work, but creating a collaborative environment and ecosystem where these gender equity practitioners can come together within the network was something that spoke to. We have a network of 84 members that's across 20 African countries. I'm based in Kenya, and we have network members in Kenya. Today was our first Kenya network gathering. And we also have other countries in East Africa like Uganda, Malawi, we're in Zimbabwe, Zambia, some francophone countries such as Togo, Cameroon, and Niger. So we're across multiple countries in Africa, and the dream is to be Pan-African in totality.
We've got another 40-something that have applied. They're in the pipeline to become network members. And even from a session like today, we had about 17 organizations that have all indicated they want to join. So we are really growing network because people are saying this is what was needed. You know, even from today, we had a few people sharing how they're feeling isolated, they're feeling burnt out, they're feeling confused because they're saying, Wangai, we're passionate about what we do, but where do we get the money? We don't even know how to find the money. Doors are being opened. We're sending all sorts of proposals. Someone is saying, I feel like I'm suffering from a mental health right now because I've taken in so much from the people I'm trying to help, and I don't know any other way. So for us, we know, and we know for sure, without shadow of doubt, that the work that we're doing is timely, it's needed, it's relevant if we're to ever go far in the gender space.
AFOG fosters an environment where leaders are not only operational, but thrive and drive transformative change in partnership with their communities.
You know, Cambridge Judge Business School is one of the most prestigious Russell groups across the world. They don't just work with, for us, we're too early in our journey, but when they heard our mission and what we're trying to do, they agreed to go in partnership with us. So for us, it was actually a big achievement and a big deal. And also the fact that we got the board members that we get, you know, for us, even year zero of our budget, we're able to get from some of our board members who are passionate about the work. For example, Aisha Oyebode, our board chair, you know, when the Boko Haram things happened in Nigeria, she was at the forefront of the Free Our Girls campaign. She even went to the front line herself. She's someone who's a very privileged person, but it wasn't like, okay, I'll just live in my privilege. Her father is the former president of Nigeria, and this woman is passionate about, you know, and she leads her own foundation called Mutala Mohammed, but she's been an incredible supporter. So for us, that was a big deal. We also had some other board members, the former president, Madame Rosalia, who was the former president of Ecuador. When she heard about this work, she said, Wangai, this nails and details what I've been trying to do, but not knowing how to do. So she's been incredibly supportive. And then the list goes and on and on and on. We've got people like Susan Sherrod, who are philanthropists who have been funding and supporting our work, to the lady called Mukwandi, who heads up one of the biggest banks in Zambia, and everybody else, Jackie, who also is the CEO of the Desmond Tutu Fellowship, that's known. So we've been able to thrive in saying we've been able to secure fantastic board members. But two, when our network started growing, like the amount of connections, for me, all these other things are materialistic, but when I think about our why we do what we do, and the impact that's happening in the relationship, and someone saying, even today, just a small conversation, someone say, just this 5-minute conversation has helped me refine my why, and it has given me the energy I need to go for the long haul. For me, that's a huge success that I could say this is incredible. I think at a personal level, I've also been privileged to, another success, we've got a team now of about 20 that are based in 10 countries across Africa. So for a young organization, that's something that we're so proud of. So as a person, when I look at myself growing up poor, without shoes, I remember this other time we went to where I grew up to just shoot a documentary, and we're looking at some of the pictures of me walking to school barefooted. I remember days, for example, when I would go to my father and say, I'm hungry, we don't have food, and Dad would say, pray, God will provide, you know. So just coming from that place to a place now, when I think about the impacts, like the relationships I've worked with, in my phone, I've worked with many presidents on the continent. I've been on the UN leadership faculty for a while. I've facilitated a number of UN policy dialogues. I've written over 6 books in the leadership space. I've featured in the UN, General Assembly on so many spaces. And yeah, so there are so many things that I've had the privilege of doing, not because I was smart, not because I was lucky, but I always say I stood on the shoulders of giants who were able to invest in me. And for me, what drives me now is how do I pay back the things that made me who I am.
VONGAI does not need encouragement. VONGAI is a powerhouse. But I would say, like, I can just imagine, that's one person, there's one VONGAI who's doing that, and I think understanding that what it looks like, creating the space for the ripple effect of her kind of impact would look like cascading that across so many other organizations. I think her showing up and sharing her story truthfully and sharing what she's been able to learn and build across her career that we are injecting into the network is so powerful, and I can't wait to see what comes out of it. And so essentially to just continue doing what she's doing, and I trust that the power of AFWAG will be limitless in the future.
The network has plans to spread its wings across the globe.
I hope in 10 years' time, the alliance will not just be in Africa. We want to have an alliance for women and girls Asia, alliance for women and girls Europe, alliance for women and girls the Americas, alliance for women and girls across the world, because I strongly believe by following this model and this work, it will impact nations. It will impact many people, and I'm hoping that one day every man, woman who's really spearheading gender initiatives would have something to say that as a result of me being part of the alliance, I've been able to sustain my organization in so many ways. So that's our vision and that's our hope going forward.
As the head of network growth and engagement, it's working collaboratively with our CEO and the team to bring to life our network strategy. So this entails growing our network. What are the best places that we can be able to share what it is our network offers and with organizations that it resonates? But then what are the different ways that creating an ecosystem of collaboration can be driven? So like, how do we make sure the network members are able to meet each other? What are the resources that they require? And how do we make sure that we provide this in an accessible manner? Being very cognizant of the very different markets across Africa, like even with the digital divide, how do we still make sure we are in communication in a virtual network with Zimbabwe as much as we are in Niger? And how do we also create country-level connection that can be driven within the network itself?
One thing that I would love is for all our network members to have ownership, to just know that I'm part of this network and I can help someone also connect into this network and plug in. But it's also, so we had a session earlier today with our network members, and one of the points that came across was as much as we are helping them, we are also learning from them. So it's a two-way relationship where we are helping each other out, connecting each other, so giving each other support and whatever we need. So I think in the long run, that's what I want to see, in just smaller communities where people are even without us having to say, we have an event here, it's them saying, oh, it's been a minute since we met, why not meet together and see how we're faring on as organizations, what we need to do better, what we need to work on, etc.
To anyone who's out there, I would like to say we need you. We believe the challenges and issues affecting women and girls are many and complex, and we need multiple players for us to tackle this. For some people who might be listening and you wonder, how can I be part of this movement? You could be part of the movement through becoming a member. For some of you who are listening, we're also looking for knowledge partners who might come behind and say, hey, I want to come behind you, either by providing knowledge, resources, and expertise. We want you to be part of this journey. And some of you might be listening and thinking, but how do I become a strategic partner? There are many of our members who are working in either places where they are helping girls with issues around periods, etc. So just getting things like pads, etc. for our members, it's something that's awesome. And then the last way is, you might be listening here and you think, I want to support financially. For this work to go far and to go further, we would love also to have financial supporters coming behind us, and also volunteers with expertise and skills across many fields. And I would say again, in my language, we've got a saying that says, Chara chimwa chitswanyi inda, which means one finger cannot kill the insect. So we need many of us to come together if we are to ever achieve gender parity on the continent.